Hi everyone, Carol Mahoney here, coming off of our live sales lab this week where we talked about objections. You know, that one thing that we all encounter as salespeople within every conversation that we have. So how do you handle objections? Because it's the one thing that I hear most from salespeople who want to be coached is how do I handle this objection or that objection? And it's very specific to them. There's a framework involved in handling objections, just like there's a framework in asking questions of buyers, and the two actually go hand in hand. So in this framework first, one of the things that we tend to do as salespeople when we hear objections is that we have all of these facts and data that we can come back with so we can try and overcome that objection with logic. Unfortunately, most objections don't come from logic, they come from emotions. We buy based on emotions. We also come up with objections based on emotions. So facts and logic, all they tend to do is cause the salesperson to get into a debate and an argument with their prospect. So instead, show some empathy. Show that you understand their objection. Simply by saying things, you know, I totally understand how you feel. I might feel the same way. Or say, you know what, you're right. There is a lot of risk in this. That's why we have X, Y, and Z resources in place to make sure that you're successful. So don't try to overcome their objections by telling them that their objections aren't valid and that they're stupid for having them, but instead empathize with them and make sure you're creating that understanding. Next, if you haven't already guessed, step to overcoming objections and eliminating them is asking more clarifying questions. When we hear objections as salespeople, we tend to get emotionally involved in the response, either because we don't know how to answer, or we're afraid of the rejection that's going to happen if this deal doesn't close, or we have this need for approval that we want them to think that we're smart and that everything we say they're going to agree with. Instead, ask clarifying questions when you get an objection. What do you mean by that? Can you tell me a little bit more about what's behind that? And see if you can isolate what the real objection is so that you can then address the actual objection. And then when you've finally done that, you can now find ways to actually minimize whatever that objection is or whatever their perceived risk is. Questions like, what if we could help you to reduce your sales cycle by 50%? How would that impact your revenue? And help paint a picture for them of what a future might look like to help reduce that negative and risk averse that they have. And then finally, once you've done that, don't be afraid to ask again. One of the ways that I like to overcome objections is asking 3 other clarification questions. Do you believe that I understand what you're going through? Do you believe that I have the expertise and solution to help? And do you want my help? Don't be afraid to ask again. Finally, when all is said and done, if you still aren't able to overcome or eliminate that ultimate objection, have an alternative. Have a smaller commitment that they can take that might make it easier for them and make it seem less risky. So if you have, say, for example, a 12-month commitment, look at doing a proof of concept or a trial or a pilot with set outcomes and objectives and KPIs determine if that's successful, what the next steps in moving into a longer engagement is going to be. So finally, realize a couple of things about objections. One is that they're going to happen, so be prepared for the fact that they're going to happen, so you won't be surprised when they do. Second, don't try to eliminate them by disagreeing with them, but actually emphasize with them. And don't think that they just happen at the close. Objections are happening throughout your sales process if you are actually listening for them and not ignoring them, because sometimes we try to ignore the things we don't want to deal with. And then finally, I would say is the last thing that's a key to all of this is get micro commitments as you're going through the sales process. Always have what the next steps are. And make sure that you're asking questions in small layered steps that help to build trust. Also look at things like the words that you're using, how fast you're speaking, the body language and eye contact that you're using. All of these are things that are going to help to build trust, which are the things that are going to help you to get past objections. So thanks everybody who joined me today. We're going to be doing it again next week on our live sales lab. So stay tuned with the link below and the topic, and we will see you next week.